In 2006, a man sat dying near the summit while more than 40 climbers walked past him. Some thought he was already gone, others knew he wasn't, and kept going anyway. He wasn't the first to die on Everest. He won't be the last. At 8,000 meters, your body is shutting down. Muscles waste, lungs drown, minds slip. It's called the death zone, and it doesn't forgive mistakes. But sometimes what happens up there isn't just about nature, it's about choices. This is the story of three men who climbed toward the same summit, but never came back. Their names were David Sharp, Green Boots, and Scott Fischer, and their bodies are. And what happened to them will change the way you see Everest forever. David Sharp wasn't reckless. He was just alone. In 2006, he set out to climb Everest without a team. No Sherpas, no bottled oxygen, no backup plan, just a belief that he could do it the pure way. In 2006, Sharp chose the cheapest expedition available, a budget climb on the north side. No weather support, no satellite comms, no backup plan. On May 13th, he set off for the summit. Sometime during the night, he may have reached the top. Some climbers later reported seeing a lone figure sitting near the summit that matched his gear. But by morning, he wasn't climbing anymore. At 8,500 meters, just below the summit, David Sharp was found curled inside a shallow limestone alcove known as Green Boots Cave, named after another dead climber whose body had marked the route for years. Sharp was lying next to it, curled up, motionless. His limbs were frozen, his face covered, oxygen mask empty. But he was alive. Climbers began passing him as early as dawn. Some thought he was already dead. Some stopped and listened. They heard groaning. A few tried to help, but no one stayed. Most assumed he was beyond saving. Some didn't want to believe he was still alive. Others simply didn't have the means to help. Not in the death zone, where every extra step feels like dragging an anchor. A Turkish team saw him. They couldn't assist. Members of a large commercial expedition noticed him too. One Sherpa stopped and checked. Sharp whispered his name. He asked to sleep, but sleep at that altitude is a final surrender. One climber radioed down. Some teams argued about what to do, but no one stayed, and no rescue ever came. That day, over 40 climbers, 40 passed David Sharp. Let that sink in. By the next morning, David Sharp was dead. His body remained in Green Boots Cave for nearly a year before Sherpas moved it onto a ledge and let it fall over the north face, a final act of dignity in a place that had shown him none. The outrage was immediate. How could so many climbers walk past a dying man? Why didn't anyone give him oxygen, try to carry him, do something? The answers are brutal. At 8,500 meters, most climbers can barely help themselves. Attempting a rescue can mean death. Few are trained. Radios fail. And David? He was alone. No one knew he was missing. No one was watching. He gambled on Everest's silence and lost. And just meters from where David Sharp took his last breath, another climber had already been lying there for a decade, a silent witness to every ascent, known not by name, but by what he wore. A few meters below Everest's main northeast ridge sits a small limestone cave, known infamously among climbers as Green Boots Cave. For years, ascending teams passed by without slowing, seeing only a curled figure on its side. Bright green plastic Koflak boots stuck out from the snow, and that was all you needed to recognize him. He became simply known as Green Boots. His real name was likely Tsewang Paljor, a head constable from Ladakh, India, born in 1968. He joined the Indo-Tibetan Border Police to serve and to climb. On May 10, 1996, Paljor, Dorje Morup, and Sewang Samanla broke away near 3:45 p.m. to push for the summit. They radioed they'd made it, but later analysis suggests they may have only reached a false peak, still about 150 meters short. A blizzard soon struck, with winds over 100 kilometers per hour and temperatures plunging below -40 degrees Celsius. None of the three returned. Later that season, climbers discovered a frozen body beneath the rock overhang at about 8,500 meters. He lay on his left side, knees tucked and arms folded. His face was obscured by ice. Gear and oxygen bottles lay nearby, and the neon green boots were unmistakable. Green boots became a fixed waypoint for climbers, a warning, a grim measurement of how close they were to the summit, or how real the risk was beneath their feet. In 2006, when David Sharp died in that very cave, many ascending climbers assumed he was Green Boots, already frozen in death. They bypassed him, expecting nothing more could be done. For over 2 decades, Green Boots lay frozen beneath a narrow ledge, an accidental milestone on the way to the summit. But not all who died on Everest were nameless. Some were legends, leaders, guides trusted with other people's lives. Scott Fischer was one of them, and in 1996, his strength finally ran out. Scott Fischer wasn't supposed to die on Everest. He was one of the best, a legend. At 40 years old, he'd already summited Everest without oxygen, a feat that earned him global respect. He was tough, charismatic, and known for his mantra: "You've got to get up, get down, and get out." But Everest doesn't care about credentials. Scott was the founder of Mountain Madness, one of the premier guiding companies on the mountain. His 1996 expedition was packed with clients, guides, Sherpas, and pressure. Because when you're the face of a business, failure isn't just personal, it's professional. On May 10, 1996, Scott began his final summit push from Camp 4 near the South Col at 7,900 meters. It started with blue skies, high hopes, but everything moved slower than planned. Bottlenecks near the Hillary Step, delays fixing ropes, altitude fatigue, and clients falling behind. Scott was struggling too. He was ill, possibly with HAPE, high-altitude pulmonary edema. His speech was slurred. He moved slowly. Even with supplemental oxygen, he couldn't maintain his pace. But he kept pushing. At 3:45 p.m., nearly 2 hours past the safe turnaround time, Scott Fischer reached the summit. He stayed for just 20 minutes before beginning his descent. But something was wrong. He was stumbling, falling behind. Lobsang Jongbu, Mountain Madness's lead Sherpa, tried to help. He short-roped Scott down, practically dragging him along. But by the time they reached the south summit, Scott collapsed. Oxygen was nearly gone. The cold was penetrating even the thickest gear. And Scott, barely conscious, told Lobsang to go down and get help. That was the last order he ever gave. Later that night, Anatoly Bukreev, a guide from Scott's own team, made a heroic solo rescue mission, saving multiple stranded climbers in hurricane-force winds. But he couldn't save Scott. When Bukreev finally reached him, Fischer was barely alive. His oxygen mask was empty. His hands were exposed. His down suit was unzipped, one arm sticking out of the fabric, a textbook sign of paradoxical undressing, a symptom of terminal hypothermia. Scott Fischer was dying, not from a single mistake, but from an accumulation of them: the altitude, the delays, the exhaustion. Bukreev stayed with him as long as he could. Then he moved Fischer's body off the main climbing route, covered his face with snow, and left him there, on the side of the mountain he'd once conquered. To this day, his body remains there, frozen into the slope. Scott Fischer wasn't a victim of bad luck. He was a victim of Everest's razor-thin margins, of trying to lead others up a peak that takes everything from everyone. He was one of the strongest, one of the boldest, and even he couldn't beat it. Because on Everest, strength can carry you up, but it doesn't always bring you back down. David Sharp, Green Boots, Scott Fischer, 3 climbers, 3 bodies, 3 truths. Everest didn't just take their lives, it took their choices, their dreams, their limits, and left them frozen in time. Because on the world's highest peak, the air is thin, but the cost is heavy, and the mountain never forgets.